way that it is.
Yeah, but we don't ask the stupid and lazy to run for a third term.
That's what's really fucking funny is that, you have a bunch of people going, well, America's so far behind, and they don't have free college, and they don't have free health care. And then you have Russia, Ukraine pop up, and everybody goes, America, please help.
Right.
Yeah. America, please send.
We are behind, but that's not for want or need. It's just the political system. We need everybody to agree because it's not the president, it's the people. And so there's no other system like America. Do we need to reform it? Do we need to be libertarians and reform our governmental system? Yes. Do we need to be progressives and reform our constitution like Chile and redraw our constitution in some way and update it? Yes. But do we want to burn it to the ground, give Donald Trump the rubble and say rule over this? No. That's my thought.
It is time now for something positive.
We might be headed to the promised land,
speaking the truth and finding our external liberty once we internally liberate ourselves.
The problem can only be solved when there is a kind of coalition of conscience.
Because that is how it works.
This is the beginning. It is not the finale, and that's why we're here, and that's why we rally.
We've got to be that creative minority.
Find a way to get in the way. I got in trouble. It was good trouble. It was necessary trouble.
Frankly, I know we've got to do something.
And we're back. What I thought was amazing about Kenya and their new presidential election, when I saw it, one guy won 60%, one guy won 39%, and the guy that got 39% is denying the fairness of the election. But I watched all of this stuff on the Kenyan election and the process. Like, every ballot they counted, they held up so that the camera could see it. You know what I mean? And it was so transparent. But then there was election deniers. And I was like, is this the Trump template, just circling the drain, going around the world?
Absolutely. I would say that this
is this Kenya?
No. This is the authoritarian template.
Okay.
The authoritarian template is if I didn't win, the election was rigged.
Okay.
That there was ballot stuffing, that there were people's ballots being counted that shouldn't.
Right.
I mean, it's the authoritarian template.
And that's the incumbent.
If I won, the election was fair, balanced, and accurate.
Yeah, right.
If I lost, it was mismanaged. There were problems there. There was fraud, and that's the problem. Is this stuff?
Right.
There are legitimately elections that are a fraud. Like, let's be real honest. There's no way in hell Russia's elections are ever actually accurate.
Or Hungary's. Come on.
So we have to talk about. Let's talk about two different types of what I would call bad elections.
Yeah.
There are the ones where, when I say they're fraudulent, I mean, there are ballots being stuffed in places. You've got precincts that are getting 140% of the vote.
Okay.
Let's be real fucking honest.
And that's reported and recorded and monitored by the UN?
Some of it is.
Right. I mean, they're just there to report. They're not there to stop the abuse, but they're to record it.
Right. And so, in places like that, you genuinely have these elections that are so completely fucked up that, all of us looking from the outside go, yeah, no, we knew that was a fucking fraud. But then you have what I would consider the other fraudulent elections, is where you have only one party to choose from.
Right.
Where you have active work to keep another party from being able to voice their message using public media streams, where you have I would say political oppression, where you're legitimately trying to keep another party from even being seen.
Right.
You might not necessarily
shooting your opponent, you're jailing your opponent. Right.
You have political assassinations.
You own the news cycle, and you tell the world they're bad. The Russias, the Hungaries of the world.
So,
Okay.
I have a lot of issues with our election system, being that there are two main parties, and
whatever.
And we have we have like half a dozen other smaller parties that never ever get above like 3% of the vote.
I agree.
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
And legitimately,
because one of the parties is scaring you. You're going to siphon off our voters. Please don't vote independent. There's fucking 45% of America is independent.
Like you have Republicans who don't want libertarian candidates because they siphon off Republican voters. You have Democrats who don't want the Green Party because the Green Party siphons off Democratic voters.
But you could give the Green Party proportionate representation. If they got 3%, if they got 3% of the seats, that would start developing room for other parties to come in and grow.
But that's not how our election system works.
No,
and for worse, I honestly think so. But with authoritarians, it doesn't matter like what side they're on. Because let's be real honest, you've got like the conservative authoritarians, the fascists like Russia, and then you have the socialists like Venezuela, and then of course you've got communist countries like China and Cuba and North Korea, or other religious authoritarian regimes like Iran, for example.
China. Right.
So it's
the Philippines.
The issue is the authoritarian side. It's not that's really the issue, because it's the same playbook across that spectrum.
Yeah.
If I win, the elections are legitimate. If I lose, the elections are a fraud.
That's what I'm saying. I think authoritarians got together and created a Facebook for authoritarians, and they're sharing their ideas together. And I think CPAC is like a way for the Republicans to join that group.
I think the CPAC has turned into something that is absolutely like I feel like if their quote unquote lifelong love, Ronald Reagan, saw what they were doing, Reagan would be like, "What the fuck?"
I agree. What are you doing with the Russian? What are you in bed with a Russian for? I think he would have a fit,
Right. Or if JFK saw, the way that, some of the liberal people look to places like China or even Venezuela, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Some of the or FDR, he would, they would look at what their parties have done, and they would go, what the fuck are you on? What is this? This is bullshit.
This is bullshit. Right.
And so one of the things that, I try to keep in mind with this is that, there's a reason why I look at myself more like I'm not a centrist in the term of, in the terms of like, I'm not Democratic or Republican. I'm libertarian I am the exact opposite of authoritarian. I do not like authoritarians.
Okay.
And I think that our system of government lends more credence to authoritarians than it should.
Yeah, we gotta stop expecting the president to do everything. What was it that Dr. Oz was on TV and he's like, $6 salsa, we got President Biden to blame for that. And I put out a tweet about that. I was like, so you really don't think it's the supply chains causing this? You don't think it's the lack of migrant workers like working on this? You don't think all of these other things that raise the price of that food? It's Biden. Biden's to blame for my expensive salsa. People, get off your fucking high horse. It's not a president's job alone to fix it, And it wasn't.
Well, and that's.
I'll say that till the cows come home. I don't want Trump. I don't want Biden fixing it. I just don't want them coming up with creative solutions to my problems. I want the people to speak about.
Now there are some issues that you can certainly place on the shoulders of Biden in this case, but I would also place them on the shoulders of Trump too. The thing about having a diverse energy supply is that our ability to move goods from one end of the country to the other is costing more because, number one, we're not getting as much oil thanks to Russia's war in Ukraine,
right?
But also thanks to the fact that we have sanctioned places like Venezuela and Iran that are major oil producing countries, to the point where what should be an abundance of supply is unavailable.
That's right, because if you remove the sanctions, you crash the market, and also say what we were doing was wrong. And more importantly, in this political atmosphere, he can't say what we're doing is wrong. So he has to have the sanctions on. But honestly, remove the sanctions, crash the market, oil will be $1, you know?
Right. And so you have that, but then also too, like if you actually took the time to to invest in alternative energy sources that saved fuel, the dollar, the price of oil would crash even further. There are some good reasons why, maybe places in the city should run solely on electric cars. It's not just the smog, it's the fact that, you're not driving that far to begin with. So getting into your car, plugging it in when you get home, so that way it's charged for the next day.
Yeah,
pretty easy to sit down and say, look, there are some benefits for people to use electric vehicles in the city, and realize that, if you want to go long distances, gas powered, diesel powered vehicles are going to be the way to go, because you're going to get further on, quote unquote, a tank of gas.
That's right. I don't know, the Star Trek Enterprise didn't run on gas,
but it used nuclear fuel.
That's what
That's
what I'm saying. We need to advance. Like, okay, so the car was invented, people started getting run over. Did the president get blamed because industry was expanding? Like, I don't think Biden is responsible as much as everybody has a spot in this. He's just started. He's starting the process that should have started, like with Gore, like with Clinton. We should have started turning towards clean energy. We're really late to the party, and shit got really fucked up. And it sucks that Trump did his best to deregulate the situation, and Biden could expand it. But I love what we're doing. We need to invest, and this is going to reduce the deficit. The name sucks, but the deficit will be reduced, and it's been reduced every year with Biden, and that's a cool thing to know, actually.
That's the thing, is the deficit needs to keep being reduced,
right?
But that's the thing is like, are there certain things that we could sit down and say, this is Biden's fault? Yeah, sure, because you can't really control the whole fact that Russia decided to invade a sovereign nation.
Right.
But when you take that oil off of the market, but then don't replace that oil on the market with either lifting sanctions from another country or encouraging drilling in your own, what you end up with is higher oil prices, which means higher price of delivery to food. So in that sense, do we need to have sanctions on Russia? Yes, we do, because the behavior is unacceptable. But,
I agree.
But what you have to either then say is that the American people are either going to be willing to suffer with the pain needed to uphold democracy, or B, we need to offset that pain somehow. And the way that we offset that is, unfortunate to how we want to do things. And, Biden made his choice, for better or worse.
Kind of. There was a factor in there called the European Union, who didn't, kind of stop buying Russian oil and gas. And
they've significantly
they are, and by the end of the year they'll be done with it. But in the meantime, Russia gets $1 billion a day, which is minimal for a country that size, but it still helps. Every little bit helps when you're trying to take over a nuclear facility in enemy territory. You need all the money you can get. Damn, I stepped all over my own segue there. Zaporizhzhia. Wait a minute. Can I just say something? Because I practiced. I'm going to do it. So Raila Odinga was the incumbent in Kenya that's saying the election was rigged. And William Ruto is the guy that was running for Kenyan president for the past 6 years. There's only been five presidential elections in Kenya, and this has been the least violent of all of them. But there was an election official that was murdered and his body was found, and then 4 others were contesting the election as it was being announced. And that's why it just reminded me of the Trump thing. But go Odinga, get out of there. Go away. So, but that really scared me. I thought you would want to talk about Zaporizhzhia for sure, because this is a nuclear power plant with 6 reactors that could affect everyone. And what's Russia doing there? What's going on there? What's going on?
Nuclear terrorism. That's what Russia's doing there.
But he's allowing UIAA for whatever. He's allowing nuclear officials in to monitor. Eventually, at some point, he says. Not that he's ever lied. He's lied once or twice, but he wouldn't lie about this, right?
You also have to remember that part of the authoritarian playbook is, oh no, I'll totally allow you in. You get to go here, but none of these other places.
Right. Yeah, agreed. And while you're here, that bomb that just hit the building, that was Ukraine. That wasn't ours.
Yeah. Ukraine doesn't want that fucking plant. They've already dealt with and continue to deal with Chernobyl.
Yeah.
They don't need a second one.
That's right.
Russia doesn't give a shit. That's the thing. Russia does not give a shit. Their mentality is it's ours or it's nobody's.
Right. They're putting military equipment.
They literally are storing military hardware there.
Right. And they're shooting at the city right across the way. Like thousands of people have died just across the street from this plant because Russians are bombing there. And they're saying that Ukraine is trying to bomb them. And it's crazy. Why would Ukraine start bombing that facility, you know?
Well, it's crazy because... It's crazy because this is what Putin's army is doing. And that's where this is just absolutely fucking wild.
Yeah.
Like, this is so bad.
I agree.
This is so bad.
Just get out of there, Russia. Just get out of there.
That's the thing, though, is that, you know, this whole issue, like, one of the things that, you know, the world is going to have to sit down and decide is what would constitute a terrorist act.
Agreed.
That would require involvement.
Right.
And taking over and setting up military hardware in a nuclear power plant is one of those things where there needs to be a serious conversation about what that looks like.
Yes.
Because these things are nothing to fuck around with.
I thought that at the very beginning of this war, that, man, you need to get some like united forces in there, UN forces, to just surround these places so that nobody can get in, you know? Which is
ideally, like, you know, if there was a thing that you could do, make the UN do, this would be one of them. It's like, look, you know, these nuclear power plants, it's like, these are not war zone targets.
They're not Ukraine. They're not Russia. They are a sovereign nation.
You guys duke it out.
Themselves.
I mean, it shouldn't even be up for discussion. They are part of Ukraine, and it shouldn't have anything to do with Russia. But here we are. So
facing nuclear war again. That's going to affect everybody, by the way. You know what I mean? What do you want to see this nuclear cloud? You don't think this nuclear cloud, like the wind couldn't just blow up to Russia and just kill everybody? But I really want to say Ukraine, fuck yeah. Like, I love them. I feel like we're letting Ukraine punch out Russia as best they can, so we come in and have a justification to fucking just kill. You know,
I mean, the numbers as of this week, Russia has lost more people in Ukraine in 6 months than the Soviet Union lost in Afghanistan in 9 years.
Yeah. And Putin can't go to the general public for more troops without alarm bells going off that he's doing a bad job and losing that many people. So he's trying to conscript people from occupied regions that Russia has, like Romania and Macedonia.
Transnistria.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. So
I mean, realistically, like, I think that at some point Europe and America are going to have the conversation of what does the end of this look like?
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with massive issues, and we either have to keep throwing money and arms at Ukraine, or if we want this to end, you know, countries in Europe have to be willing to fight this against Russia.
That kind of sucks, though. How do you come in at the end of their war and say victory? Like, I think we have to let Ukraine win this one at this point. I like what we're giving them. We're giving them mine-sweeping detecting equipment, and that tells me they're gaining ground. They're getting more HIMARS and anti-tank missiles. That tells me that they're doing a great job with the equipment we're giving them. And yeah, Russia is not as advanced as Ukraine's equipment, as the equipment Ukraine is getting. Russia isn't as advanced technologically. You know what I mean?
Russia. It turns out that the Russian army is a paper tiger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is like, yeah, starting in 2014, we started training Ukrainian troops, but we were training Ukrainian troops on tactics. We weren't training them using, sophisticated weapons.
Yeah, I just think
realistically, if we could train Ukrainian pilots on American airframes,
hell yeah.
If we could train Ukrainian tankers on American tanks, if we could train Ukrainian soldiers with Ukrainian Navy servicemen using American boats,
I agree.
I realistically think that there would be no question about whether or not,
or British tanks are fine with me too.
I mean,
Turkey, send some more drones, please. Let's have another party.
There would be no question about whether or not Ukraine could take on the Russians.
So here's my question. I have a great question. Sorry. I love Ukraine. So we've spent $10 billion. We've given Ukraine $10 billion. When this is all over, do we hand the bill to Russia?
Well,
I think we should. In a war crimes, wouldn't that be part of compensation?
So there's that.
Okay, I'm just curious.
So you have so basically right now what you have is quote unquote lend lease. And so what we've done is we've dusted off the old playbook from the Second World War, the Lend Lease Act. Basically, the equipment is ours.
Right.
Quote. Now, does that mean that we're actually going to ask for it back? No. And realistically, why would we do that? Why would we not do that? Well, here's the real answer. Either A, number one, we sell the munitions and everything needed, the maintenance, in order to keep those things running to Ukraine. Two, we sell the licensing and the training in order to do it.
Love it.
And realistically, Ukraine is, all of the nations that we've participated in Lend-Lease with, they typically continue to use our equipment. Why? It's readily available.
Well, advancing.
They can order. They can, and even to the point where it's like, for example, like HIMARS or the I forget what the tank version of it is,
or the laser dome in Israel, right?
But like the tracked version of HIMARS, for example, I think it's the M270 is what it's called.
Yeah, that's what they just sent a whole bunch of. They're killer at killing tanks.
So the M270 is basically like HIMARS is, you've got 6 rocket tubes that can get loaded in, and they can just take the fuck off real fast.
Right.
The M270 is a tracked version of it, and it does not do that. Is it mobile? Absolutely. Is it as mobile as HIMARS? But you get more rockets out of it, so it's a trade-off. More firepower, less mobility. More mobility, but less firepower.
Yeah.
HIMARS, you can literally fire that fucker and haul ass.
Nice.
The M270 is not quite the same.
Okay.
So, but here's where things get fun. So like the M270, Germans have a bunch of M270s, but the Germans make their own rockets for the M270.
Gotcha.
I believe there's a couple other places that have the M270 as well, and they make their own rockets for it as well.
That's cool.
And so these are places, I think Britain is one that makes their own rockets for them. But the idea is that, you have places now that have their own centralized manufacturing. Yeah, so what this could lend to is, Ukraine could now manufacture their own rockets. I mean, we've seen what the Neptune missile is capable of.
Fuck yeah. Go Ukraine.
So if Ukraine, which has a heavy investment in, arms manufacturing at this point,
right?
What I can see, Ukraine turning into is something much like Israel, something much like is it the Czech Republic or Serbia? One of the Czech. I think it's the Czech Republic, where they become basically their own arms building facilities. I mean, the thing is like Ukrainian. I think it's the T-64 is what Ukraine makes. It's basically like they basically took the T-72 and they made it better. And then you have what they've also done with the AK-74 is they have their own bullpup version called the Malyuk. And basically they made it entirely functional, but they turned it into a bullpup so that way you could fight close quarters instead of, your traditional, long gun.
I love all of that.
So Ukraine, what Zelensky has said is that, at this rate, what Ukraine needs to look at doing in order to protect its sovereignty is to become an arms manufacturer, much like places like Czechoslovakia, not Czechoslovakia because they're not a country, but the Czech Republic or Israel has done, and that they become their own arms manufacturer, or South Korea, for example, is another great one, that they become their own. They become their own ability to manufacture their safety and arm their population. I think in a lot of ways what you'll see there as well is you will see kind of like a look and a shift, kind of like the American population where we have the right to bear arms. Ukraine in this war literally started handing out rifles to civilians who wanted to defend themselves, their country. And I think that that's absolutely brilliant. And I think that one thing that Americans need to remember is that, we might not, we might not see Canada or Mexico that can come in and try and compete with us. But there is one army out there that probably could, and they're not going to do that. But realistically, you don't want to sit down and go, we don't need these things because we're never going to face it. You want to have these things so that way you don't have to face it. And so that's amazing. Where that's been one of those things. Like you watched a bunch of people go from, nobody needs a weapon of war to, oh hell yeah, let's just give them to Ukraine. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah. All right. I don't mind that at all. Let Ukraine advance in their own sovereign way.
Exactly. And I think that's what you will see happen with Ukraine is that they will advance in ways that that makes sense from an Eastern approach.
And they will have done it because of Russian aggression. Like,
exactly.
You could have just let the sleeping bear lie, Russia, but you had to keep poking it until it advanced enough to kill you.
And that's the thing is like, Ukraine got a lot of weapons. They got what I would say is a lot of C tier and B tier weapons. And the Ukrainian army has been absolutely fucking playing merry hell with the Russian army,
right?
In a way that shouldn't have happened.
They're still taking their losses, but not incomparable at all to the Russian losses.
It has been something that is absolutely astounding to look at. Like it has been absolutely wild.
Well, they can create small pockets that can attack and maneuver, whereas Russia needs, like you said, has a top-down command, and nobody does anything without the general saying so. It's just a different form of fighting.
And I think that's been one of the things that Ukraine learned from starting to work with American soldiers is that we have a top-down plan, but our plan on the battlefield is fucking chaos. And the funny thing is that all of the major armies that we've faced off against in history have said the exact same thing. In fact, I want to say was it Rommel or was it was either Rommel, Goering, or Guderian who said that the American battle plan is chaos. In a standard warfare sense, you have all of this top-down command, you have all of this planning. The Americans' fundamental strength is taking whatever you think is possible and throwing it out the window.
Right.
And saying, fuck you, watch this.
Essentially. They used to just send a line of soldiers and a guy would sit on a horse and go, fire. And that's how they did war. They'd fire cannons at each other on purpose until enough of them were dead, and then the general would go back and go, well, we lost. But America suddenly said, we're going to do the guerrilla tactics, right? I can't remember what movie that was. One of those Mel Gibson movies.
That was The Patriot.
The Patriot, yeah. But
even still, essentially, in that case, we kind of changed warfare as it was. It used to be highly frowned upon to pick off officers and generals. It was considered ungentlemanly.
That's right.
It was like, well, fuck you. You're the ones making decisions, and we want you out. Right. So, boom.
You don't attack an army on their way to the field, right? Yep.
Right. And we're like, that doesn't, fuck off. Get out of our country. Don't do that.
Don't get out. Yeah.
Or, but even then, still it was just like the thing about the thing about an army is that it's only as good as its supply lines, and it's only as good as its ability to think on its feet.
Yeah.
If your battle plan is just throw a bunch of people at it until you overwhelm it, if you have enough people, it's a strategy. But if you don't have enough people, it's a bad strategy.
Right.
It always has been.
Hi, MAGA. Sorry, that's MAGA to me. So somebody said, are we divided? And I was like, well, 85% are anti-insurrection. 11% are kind of for it. I don't know if that's a divide. I think it's a fracture we can work on.
Well, like you look at some of the greatest battles of history where, the top-down planning was what dictated the marching orders of your general army,
right?
And those failed miserably.
Rome and Napoleon, yeah.
Even as recently as the Second World War, you had the German army just outside the gates of Moscow. But Hitler was so hell-bent on getting Stalingrad that it got turned into a meat grinder.
Yep.
And instead of capturing the head of the Soviet Union, you lost so many millions of troops because of bad strategy.
Enemy at the gates.
Now,
God, that was a good movie too.
With the American strategy is this is the end goal. Here's what we think is going to work. If that is not what you're seeing on the battlefield, find a way to make it work. You solve the problem at a smaller local scale.
You command your area. Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that you end up having these groups come up with these weird fucking tactics that work on small scales, and it is about encouraging adaptation.
That's right.
Adapt to the scenario and the situation that you're in, and you fucking figure out what lever you need to pull in order to beat the shit out of it.
So there was a story I can segue real easy to, and it's China called us stupid and lazy. So I kind of did China called us stupid and lazy tweet storm. China calls us stupid and lazy as they cower from our fucking advanced military. You know what I mean? Like, are we stupid and lazy? You're stealing our technology. You're like, you would be a third world country if our corporations didn't invest in you. Your power grid is stretched to the max, and you just created it. Like, are you as advanced? Your vaccine kind of sucked, So I don't know if America's stupid and lazy, but I will say a portion of America is stupid and lazy. But we're working on that, China.
There's always a portion of every country that's stupid and lazy, and that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, but we don't ask the stupid and lazy to run for a third term.
That's what's really fucking funny is that you have a bunch of people going, well, America's so far behind, and they don't have free college, and they don't have free health care. And then you have Russia, Ukraine pop up, and everybody goes, America, please help.
Right. Yep.
America, please send.
We are behind, but that's not for want or need. It's just the political system. We need everybody to agree because it's not the president, it's the people. And so there's no other system like America. Do we need to reform it? Do we need to be libertarians and reform our governmental system? Yes. Do we need to be progressives and reform our constitution like Chile and redraw our constitution in some way and update it? Yes. But do we want to burn it to the ground, give Donald Trump the rubble and say rule over this? No. That's my thought.
No, and then that's exactly it. It's that we have our problems. Absolutely, we have our problems.
They're fixable, though.
They are. They could be fixable. Yeah. I will say they could be fixable. Yeah. But there are things that have been prioritized in this country for better or for worse. And there are certain things that I wish that we would prioritize differently.
Me too.
But
we will
until I would say until the world accepts the fact that, as long as countries insist on trying to take over other countries, the America that is going to be a arms manufacturing powerhouse.
That's fine.
That's all there is to it. And we're going to sell that technology to our friends and our allies. And we're going to learn how to use that technology. And when a Russia-Ukraine pops up, when a China-Taiwan pops up, when a whoever pops up,
it's real easy to defend democracy against communism. Like if you skewed and vagaried and grade the definitions of everything, you might be able to slip in and subvert it. But when you make it a hard line of democracy, communism, I know what I'm fighting. And I'm happy to fight that anywhere. Any big brother would want to, defend a little brother.
I'm happy to fight authoritarianism. Not even just communism. Authoritarianism.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you feel like the word authoritarian, the word oligarch are academic liberal words to seem smarter? Can we just call it oppression? Because I think certain people just hear those as French words, like big words, and they just discount them. Like you're calling Donald Trump an authoritarian. You had to make up a word for what he is. And I think people they didn't hear it 10 years ago and they don't like
these are words that have existed for centuries.
Yeah.
And it's not my fault that the average person has an unwillingness at this point to even just Google what that means.
We could call him a kleptocrat too. That word's been around forever. But
kleptocrat, oligarch, theocratic, whatever you want, whatever type of rule it is. The thing is that the problem that we currently
see
is monarch,
right? See, there's words for that, king or monarch. I feel like academics are like, I want to use a bigger word to sound more important, but you could call him an oppressor,
Well, so, I mean, but that's the thing is that, king was the English term. You had Kaiser, you had Tsar, you had Caesar, I get it. But it was all meant to describe a monarch, a ruler. Or, you had a dictator, somebody who was, they were not, they didn't see that their power was bestowed by God. They were just, I am the ruler, fuck you.
Oh, yeah. These terms they're familiar in Cuba, in Iraq, in Hungary. People know those words. But in America, they're these new terms that we're having trouble. I don't have a trouble with calling him an authoritarian. I try not to use that word on Twitter because I think certain dumb people are like, you're just trying to be academic. So I call him an oppressor. You know what I mean? Donald Trump, the oppressor.
And the problem is that people don't, people have different ideas on what an oppressor is. Just because you don't feel oppressed doesn't make them an oppressor, but you cannot deny whether or not someone is an authoritarian based on certain definitions, because the average person, like the average white person, like you or me, would sit down and say, well, Donald Trump hasn't oppressed me, so how is he an oppressor?
Right. Those that oppress will oppress.
But there's a bunch of people who will go, oh yeah, no, he definitely is an oppressor.
Right. But he wants to be a king. That makes sense.
But when you look at the definition of an authoritarian, you start to see a much more concrete definition.
You get to see his playbook, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you have the right word and the right definition, you start to see what makes more sense. For example, I want to say it was the book 1984 was banned it was banned in China and the USSR for being anti-communist.
Wow.
But in certain parts of the United States, it was banned for being pro-communist. The reality of the book is that 1984 is anti-authoritarian.
And the truth is not neutral.
And so when you look at reality, it's that people don't understand what the word authoritarian is, and what it means, and that is not our fault that they refuse to learn what that means.
And you can be a fascist authoritarian, you can be a nationalist authoritarian.
Hitler was a fascist authoritarian.
You can have a communist authoritarian.
Stalin was a communist authoritarian.
You can have a socialist authoritarian. You can also have a democratic authoritarian, apparently. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is that, and then that's the real answer. Is an authoritarian is authoritarian. It doesn't matter what form of government that it takes.
So people just have to get that word in their vocabulary as normalized. Okay.
Someone who believes that they have all of these powers centralized in one person. That is an authoritarian.
And it's not wrong for him to have those beliefs. If Donald Trump believes that he wants to be America's first authoritarian, he's free to explore that.
Yep, he's free to explore it.
Sorry.
And I don't want it.
Right. I don't blame the people that speak it. I blame the people that hear it. You know what I mean? You made the decision to follow this fucking corny fucking whatever.
And that's the thing is that for me, I am anti-authoritarian. I don't care if it's left or
me too. Right. Me too.
Like I don't the thing is that I believe that people need to be able to make their own choices.
Yeah.
And explore their own who they are.
Right.
And have relatively few guardrails to do that.
That's right. I don't want
that the government puts on us. Freedom of speech is a big one for me. Like
agreed.
I had to laugh because there's a federal judge that called Florida a First Amendment upside down, like in terms of Stranger Things.
Right.
Like something we've talked about. To me, Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, the Stop Woke bill. Those are things that are government curbs on free speech.
That
is illegal.
They're an overreaching government. Like that's
exactly.
That's an expansion of government controls. And I think progressives and libertarians agree on that. Stay out of our business. I just don't want 50 authoritarians. I don't like states' rights because I don't like 50 authoritarians. I want a check for every governor. And
here's the thing is that
has to be federal.
And here's the thing is that libertarians would also tell you they don't want 50 authoritarians either.
Right.
What they want are, what the average libertarian wants is relatively few widely accepted guardrails.
Right.
That, these are things you cannot do. Period. End of story. Like we all agree that, for example, freedom of speech is paramount. Being able to say what you are and not have the government censor you.
I agree.
I think people genuinely don't understand the concept of freedom of speech because they keep saying, well, Facebook keeps taking my stuff down. Facebook's a private company. They can censor whatever the fuck they want. It's your job to decide whether or not you're willing to patronize
And again, it's not Joe Biden or America's government that should be regulating your conversations. Do it yourself. Face the consequences. Grow up there,
Right. And the thing is that, for every person who goes, well, I can't believe that, they would censor what I say. You get, well, I can't believe that they would let child pornography on their servers. And we got to do something to stop it. Yeah, we do.
We do.
We have laws and they do.
And
they do stop
it works. Right. But it wouldn't do that in a communist state. The checks wouldn't be there. It would be one man deciding whether that porn should stay on the server or not, as opposed to a system that corrects for that.
Right. Exactly. So, and the reality is that
America.
when you have high level things, it's like these are things all Americans will abide by.
Yes,
Americans in general can come to agreements.
We can all agree. That's our series.
And that's the few things. These are the few guardrails that need to be in place.
Okay, what can we all agree on? Give me one.
What can we all agree on? I think we can all agree on the idea that I should be able to practice my religion without any sort of interference.
I love that.
And realistically, that is a thing in America. That is allowed. We've had some not so shining moments, but there have been reasons why. For example, I will go with the whole Warren Jeffs saga. we didn't necessarily have an issue with the fact that they were polygamist. That was a great mainstream media scare tactic back in the day.
Okay.
What we had a problem with from a federal standpoint is there were 14, 13, 12-year-old girls being forced into marriage.
Right.
And having babies. And we can all agree that, you know, kids should not be getting, you know, pregnant.
Can we all? Yes, we can all agree.
We can all agree whether or not they carry it. That's not something we can agree on at this point.
Right. I know that's where my pause was.
We can all agree that shouldn't be happening.
We can all agree that 12-year-olds should have the right to not be pregnant.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's where our issue was. We were kind of, you know, the government was kind of like, well, you know, it's a whole religion. There's not really a whole lot we can do about it. But the moment that kids started showing up pregnant was the moment that it, you know, what you ended up having was, you can call it a religion all you want, but child abuse is child abuse.
Right.
And there's a very fine definition for that.
So society failed to uphold its standards on these polygamists, and the government had to. And, you know, like Waco too, we had to kill those fuckers, you know, and Ruby Ridge too. We had to kill them. We just had to as a government. They overstepped their bounds. Religion is a touchy subject. Somebody on Twitter was like, if they get to send me Christmas cards, I get to send them pagan holiday cards. And I was like, wait, I like Greek mythology. Can I get in this multi-religious card circle? You know, because I think that would be so cool. Send a card with your religion to a bunch of people, and we can have 13 different religions represented every Christmas. I love that idea.
I'm not a religious person, and I will wish people happy holidays. I'll wish them Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, a happy Eid. You know, whatever. I you know, you can still say Merry Christmas.
Hell
it's just the Jewish person doesn't celebrate a Merry Christmas. They celebrate Hanukkah. So wish them a happy Hanukkah.
That's right.
And maybe the Jewish person in return will wish you a Merry Christmas because you celebrate Christmas. You know, that's really what it boils down to.
May the gods be with you. I love Zeus. You know what I mean?
You know, and that's where the whole freedom of religion is. You know, it is in the idea that, you know, the government cannot force a religion upon you, and nor should you force a religion upon anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, it's that, you know, if you don't celebrate anything, great, that's perfectly fine. You know, happy holidays, pretty generic if you celebrate anything.
Right. I think freedom is a box on the shelf, and you can pick it up and choose to use it, or you can set it aside and let somebody else use it, you know? And I think that I talked to you about having the woke conversation, but I worked that out on Audio Pong. But Marco was in fear that for me to question my identity meant he had to as well, or he couldn't. He had to become a gray alien, he called it, with no gender and no sexual identity. And I had to tell him that he gets to be what he wants to be if he wants to be, but freedom gives somebody like me the choice to explore all of the options and talk about them and come back to who I am. Just because he landed on who he was already doesn't mean we all have. And freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means I get to land where I want without hurting you, you know?
Right. It's like, that's great. If you identify, if you sat down, you know, if you didn't sat down,
even if you didn't,
I'm cis white straight dude.
Right.
Great. Cool.
I don't want cream of wheat.
That's perfectly accessible. That's
right.
You know, nobody is saying that you can't be that. It's
right.
That nobody, but what people are saying is that you can't keep people from not being that.
Right. It's there if you want to use it. You know, it's there if you want to use it. If you don't want to use it, let somebody else use it. And I think that's the important thing. I think
we were actually having this conversation last night here in the house. It's like, I genuinely don't understand how somebody can be so involved in somebody else's life that they have no fucking connection to whatsoever.
Right.
Like, I legitimately don't understand. I'm just trying to keep my own shit together here.
I asked Marco, I was like, who are you basing? You're judging a transgender person for wanting to be transgender, but what are you basing that on? Yourself. And if you're basing it on yourself, of course you don't want to be transgender, but you're not them. You know?
Exactly.
Like, I was so amazed that I articulated that so well. I made to fucking Instagram, you know?
Yeah, it's you are you. You get to be you, and I think that's one of the biggest things that you have this group of people that have not understood this. It's like nobody is saying that you don't get to be cis, white, straight.
That's right.
Nobody is saying that. What they are saying is that you don't get to force that upon other people.
Right.
Like nobody is saying you don't get to be Christian. What they are saying is you don't get to force that on somebody else.
Right.
It would be no different than if somebody who was a Muslim was forcing that upon you. What are you going to do? You're going to fight back.
That's right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Or you could be like, all right, cool.
You could go do you. We need more of you in the world. I can't be a mechanic, but somebody else is. Should I judge him for being a mechanic? No, I think I should just accept the fact that he can work on a car, you know?
It's like you can't stop the fact that, there are people out there that were, born physically in the wrong body, but you don't get to sit down and say, no, you weren't.
Yeah, you don't get to question that.
Like that's great. If you feel like you were born in the wrong body and by getting the body that matches to who you are makes you a happy, healthy, productive person, cool. That has nothing to do with me.
That's right.
At all.
That you still have
nothing to do with me.
You still have the ability to wander through identities as you want to. Like I told them, I'm a heterosexual man now. Now I'm a gay man. Now I'm a bi man. Now I'm pansexual. It gives me the freedom to do all that without somebody judging me for it. And that's what woke is to me. I don't know what it is to other people. It's a weapon to other people, and I don't think it should be. It's not trying to oppress the right. Like, I also believe that if you want to be a narrow-minded bigot, you have the right to do that until you hurt somebody.
And that's, and unfortunately, like, you're never going to be able to stop people from sincerely held beliefs. Right. I do think that some of those beliefs are held because they were taught to hold those beliefs. I really do. I've heard time and time again how people who were racist, who were sexist, experienced a hardship that the person that they hated helped them through, and it made them question their entire worldview as to why did I hold these beliefs. And what you come to find out is that there's a lot of it that can be, there's a lot that it's real hard to reprogram out. And mentally speaking, the plasticity of our brains changes over time. And realistically, at some point, our brains cannot handle more change. Yeah. Like there just is a point where our brains just do not have the capability to accept more change. However, there are ways to begin to understand that, whether or not you accept a change doesn't really fucking matter. Like,
it doesn't.
Somebody being trans is not based upon my acceptance of them being trans. Right. Like it has nothing to do with me. Right. Absolutely zero to do with me. What it has to do with me is whether or not they feel safe enough telling me about who they are. Right. That has everything to do with me and how I am around other people. Sure. If they don't feel safe around me, they ain't gonna tell me. And that's, unfortunate. Yeah. Do I think it's my business to know? No, absolutely not. Whether they're my friend, whether I'm in love with them, whether they're just a random person on the fucking street that I am literally gonna see for, a half a second and never think about again. Right. Does not matter. That's not right. My business, not my job. And that's kind of where the whole libertarian standpoint comes in. Is like, you do you.
Yeah, you do you. I like that.
You get to be whoever the hell you are.
Yeah.
My job is to be kind and be the person that you feel safe around.
I like that.
Like, it's like, you are who you are, and it is not my business to question that.
Right. It's my business to stick around or not.
And it's not even my business to accept it because who the fuck am I to accept who somebody else is? It is my job. It is my job to love, and it is my job to keep, the general people around me safe from myself.
Okay.
And realistically, it's like, part of that is learning, part of that is growing, part of that is understanding that the world around us is constantly changing, that we've had all of these different things come into the forefront because we've had all of these new technologies explode into existence that teach us things at the speed of light, right and wrong.
That too.
Good and bad. True information, misinformation, disinformation. There is so much around us. Mm-hmm. Like, there are a lot of things that we have access to that we've never had access to.
We've had more people having access to them.
we've had more people having access to them, and we've had more voices being allowed the chance to speak than we have ever had in our history.
That's right. But like I told the guys at Audio Pong, handicapped people, they just became uninstitutionalized in the 80s. Like women couldn't have abortions 50 years ago. Black people just got the right to vote, 60 years ago? Like transgender, you couldn't do that in America. You had to go to another country to do that. So what's happening is people are getting their freedoms and a little more equality, and social media is helping them broadcast that. And there's a lot of messages out there because this is the first time pansexuals had a word to call themselves pansexuals, and they fucking love it, And I like that. Shout out to the pansexuals.
And that's and the glorious thing about all of that is that I get to choose what it is I want to learn about and how much I want to understand, how much and find out how much I can understand, and understand that it is not up to me to produce, any sort of quote unquote acceptance. It is my job to simply understand that this person exists, they are allowed to exist, and it is none of my business what they do or don't share with me.
You can't judge without comparing, and if you have no comparison, you can't judge. What my question is, you're calling yourself hetero, but you haven't seen, not you, I'm sorry, not you, Jeffrey, but the audience.
The general.
The hetero.
The royal.
The hetero men out there, like me maybe, you haven't seen a vagina in years, and you play with more penis than you ever can vagina, but you call yourself hetero. What do you call a man that plays with his penis more than he plays with any vagina? Like at some point, what does that man stop being hetero and start being self-pleasuring?
Yeah, it's and that's the thing is that it's.
If you play with
sit
penis,
down and you can sit down and dive into all of this. You can dig into all of this. You can try and understand and rationalize every single bit and piece of this. And legitimately, there's so much to go down, and there's so much to explore, and there's so much to learn about. And it's an exciting realm. It really, truly is.
Yeah. And we're going to get more people on to be more perspectives about this stuff.
Absolutely.
It's fucking cool. I love that stuff, man. I want to shout out Adam. I just found out yesterday that Russell Wilson was on the Broncos now. And then what I was watching, the Bears were winning so bad, I turned it off like at the third quarter. I feel bad for you guys. You need a new coach. What's with this Pete Carroll? Let's move on. Anyway.
I haven't been watching yet because it's preseason, and let's be real honest, preseason games are not that good.
Yeah, shout out to preseason announcers. Some people can't see, and they're depending on your description of the game and not the commentary about things going on in the stands. I watched an entire Bears series. They scored. The announcers didn't talk about the Bears at all. And like 10 minutes before the half, they were like, hey, there might be some people watching because the Bears are playing too. I hate preseason for that. Fuck yes. So next week you're on vacation. We're going to have the guys from Audio Pong filling in for you, Zach and Marco. So get set for that coming up in our next episode, because this is Thursday. We're going to be doing Sunday. So, but yeah, you're going on vacation. I like that.
Yep, I'm doing a quick trip out to Montana. I'm working on my plan today. I'm going to start off my trip heading out to Spokane to go see a buddy.
Love that.
And then I think it's going to be Helena to see some family, Bozeman, Big Timber to see some family, and then Missoula to kind of chill out for a night, visit with a friend that I haven't seen in almost like 12 years or something like that.
Fuck, I love that.
And then it'll be on to back home with my guitar amp, so that way I can chill out and start to play some guitar with my youngest, start going over some stuff like that. So it's going to be a good time.
I love that for you. And that's a whole song right there. That whole trip, you should just, on the way, just start coming up with lyrics and make a 19-minute song.
I'm more of a death metal person, so I'm more of a concept album person. So I've got a concept that I'm currently trying to work out, and so now I get to actually start doing it.
Secret projects of Jeffrey. I love this. That's great.
My hope is at some point I'll have some good material set down, and I'll have like some good structure, and I'll sit down and start recording it and getting it all put together.
I like that. I never got to. Carly Kingsley on Twitter asked, how do extroverts find a way to be more reflective and quiet? Do you have any suggestions for that?
Ooh, how do extroverts find a way to be more reflective and quiet?
I can give you time for that. I think solitude, the more you're away from people, the less conversation you have, the more you learn to appreciate the conversations you have. And when you hear yourself babbling like I do right now, you shut up, wrap up, and ask an open-ended question so that somebody else can talk.
The problem with me is that like I'm genuinely talking all of the time.
Yeah,
so
me
like,
too.
Like if I'll be talking to a coworker, or I'll be talking to someone who needs help. I'll be talking to the dog. I'm literally talking to myself a lot. Like there'll be times where there's other people in the room and I'm not talking to any of them. I'm literally just talking to myself. They're like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like,
"Yeah,
what? Oh, sorry, no. Internal monologue that's gone external."
Yep. I do that all the time.
I'm legitimately talking to myself constantly, and I wish I could say that I had a really good reason why, but I don't.
Okay. You're an extrovert.
I'm an extrovert, and I talk to myself as a matter of many different reasons, you know, and I'd say part of that introspective process is me being alone, talking to myself and talking through things.
Right.
And that's the difference is that whether I'm talking out loud or whether I'm talking to myself in my head doesn't really matter.
Gotcha.
Sometimes that ends up coming out loud. But what I'm doing is I'm having that conversation to, how do I put this? To write it onto the hard drive. So that way it's saved for later. Which is why, you know, there's a lot of times I end up explaining stuff. And the problem is that in my head, I am explaining it to me so I understand how it works.
Yeah.
I am sitting down and I am explaining this process and how all of these things get done. And I'll have someone look at me and go, "Yeah, I know how that works. Why are you mansplaining this to me?" And I'm like, "Wait, sorry, you're not a factor in this conversation right now." So
right.
It's all up here. I'm sorry. I did not mean to explain that to you. It's a function of me, and that might be more of an ADHD thing.
I have friends that I'm trying to get past that with too. I'm trying to accept that with. You're just trying to get through your list, and I'm just trying to get through mine. It's not you're trying to tell me what to do. We both have an objective, and we're getting there.
Yep,
we're getting there.
Yep. And so for me, it's just like a lot of the time it's like, and I feel bad because then it's like, oh shit, nope. I can totally see where you think I'm trying to explain this to you. Like you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And you totally know what the fuck you're doing. And it's like, I have to stop. Like I realize when I realize it, I try to stop myself.
When you realize it, you try and stop yourself, ask an open-ended question and move on.
Well, or, you know, what I'm trying to do now is just get into the habit of, sorry, I did not mean to explain it to you. Like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm
explaining it to me because I need to know what I'm doing.
And that's for people that you love. That's not all random people. That's people that you're trying to.
I do that to. I even do that to random people. Like I'm like, sorry, nope. You know, because I don't. You know, unless somebody says, you know what? No, I didn't know that. Could you keep explaining it? And I'd be like, oh yeah, no, cool. I'll explain that. But for me, it's when I explain things out loud. The process of doing it. It's kind of like, how do I put it? It's kind of like when, you know, what our teachers thought of when, you know, like, hey, if you take notes, you'll remember it. If for me, it's if I talk about it, I'll remember it.
I agree. That's why I podcast. That's why I remember so many things, is because I have to podcast and prepare for it. With Jeffrey, the guy that can talk about anything. I brought Kenya up and the guy's talking about Kenya. I bring up fucking nuclear reactors, farming, agriculture. He's there for all of it, the law. And so I got to keep my mind sharp. I don't think you understand how much you're appreciated in my day-to-day. Thank you for that.
Oh, glad to.
You keep me on my toes, man. Fuck.
You gotta keep it moving.
I love you. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
I will see you in 2 weeks.
Couple weeks.
To those who would tear the world down, we will defeat you. This is our moment. This is our time. To those who seek peace and security. We support you.
Yes, we can.
And to all those who have wondered if America's beacon still burns as bright, tonight we prove once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals, democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbow. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, nobody is gonna hit as hard as life.
Ask not.
Yes, we can.
What your country can do for you.
I have a dream.
Ask what you can do for your country.
I, poor little children,
Yes, we can.
one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression.
In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Welcome to Public Access America.
Yes, we can.
Sunday live streams on YouTube,
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad.
on Twitter,
What?
Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Smart Radio Public, and Spotify.
Yes, we can.
Public Access America. History in the making, making history in the making.